The morning sun rose over New Busan just like any other day. Admiral Daehyun Kim stood on the observation deck of the orbital defense platform, watching the planet below. The farm stretched out like a green blanket across the continents. Rivers sparkled in the sunlight. Cities dotted the landscape, home to 12 million people who had made this world their home. Daehyun was 52 years old and had spent 30 years protecting colonies like this one. He was a careful man, always thinking about the safety of civilians. His fleet was small but well-trained. 8 destroyers and 23 frigates orbited the planet, ready to defend against pirates or raiders. It should have been enough. On the destroyer Indomitable, Captain Minji Park was running morning drills with her crew. She was 38 and proud of her ship. She had earned this command after saving a colony during the Proxima incident. Her crew trusted her completely. They moved through their exercises smoothly, checking weapons and shields. Everything was routine. Down on the planet, Governor Hyun-Soo Choi was having breakfast with his family. He was 61 and had 3 children, all grown now with families of their own. His youngest granddaughter sat on his lap, eating toast and asking him about the stars. He told her stories about Earth, the old home world that none of them had ever seen. She laughed at his jokes. It was a perfect morning. In a research facility beneath the southern continent, Dr. Yoonji Kang was studying something amazing. She was 29 and had dedicated her life to understanding alien civilizations. For months, she had been exploring ancient ruins left behind by a mysterious race called the Precursors. These aliens had disappeared millions of years ago, but their buildings remained. Today, she was mapping a new chamber deep underground. Her equipment showed strange energy readings. She made notes, excited by the discovery. Then the alarm started screaming. Admiral Daehyun ran to the command center. His sensor officer was pale, staring at his screen. The words came out in a rush. Unknown fleet. Massive. Emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Daehyun felt his blood turn cold. The numbers on the screen were impossible. 89 capital ships. 340 support vessels. This was an invasion fleet. He ordered battle stations immediately. Every ship in his fleet powered up weapons and shields. He opened communications to the unknown vessels, speaking clearly in multiple languages. Who are you? Why are you here? This is human territory. Please respond. The silence that came back was terrifying. No words, no explanation, just silence. Captain Minji got the alert on her bridge. Her stomach dropped when she saw the sensor readings. They were outnumbered 10-1. Maybe more, but she knew her duty. She ordered her crew to their stations and brought the Indomitable into formation with the rest of the fleet. If these aliens wanted a fight, humanity would give them one. The alien fleet began moving toward the planet. They were called the Vreth, though the humans did not know this yet. Their ships were dark and angular, covered in weapons. They had been an empire for 4,000 years. They had crushed 17 other species during their expansion across the galaxy. To them, humanity was just another primitive race to be swept aside. Admiral Daehyun positioned his fleet between the aliens and New Busan. He kept trying to communicate. His voice was steady, but inside he was calculating odds. They could not win this fight, but they could buy time for evacuations. He sent the order to the planet. Emergency evacuation procedures. All civilians to the transport ships. Move now. Governor Hyun-Soo heard the alarm and acted instantly. He had drilled for this, though he never believed it would happen. He kissed his granddaughter and handed her to his daughter. Get to the transports, go now. His daughter saw the fear in his eyes and ran. Hyun-Soo activated the planetary emergency system. Sirens wailed across every city. Millions of people looked up at the sky in confusion and fear. The Vreth fleet did not slow down. They did not answer any messages. They simply opened fire. Beams of purple energy lanced across space, striking the orbital defense platform first. The shields held for 3 seconds, then collapsed. The platform exploded in a ball of flame. Admiral Daehyun and everyone aboard died instantly. The human fleet attacked. Every ship fired everything they had. Missiles streaked toward the enemy. Railguns threw solid slugs at incredible speeds. Laser batteries burned through the darkness. Captain Minji's Indomitable led the charge. Her crew fought with perfect discipline, targeting enemy weak points, coordinating with other ships. They actually destroyed 11 Vreth vessels. 11 wins against an empire that thought itself invincible, but it was not enough. The Vreth had superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Human ships exploded one after another. Brave men and women died at their stations, fighting to the last breath. The Indomitable took hit after hit. Fires broke out across the ship. Half the crew was dead. Minji kept fighting, kept giving orders, even as her bridge filled with smoke. Down on the planet, Governor Hyunsu coordinated the evacuation. Transport ships lifted off from every spaceport, packed with terrified civilians. 340,000 people escaped, but there were 12 million on the planet. The math was brutal and simple. Most of them would not make it. When the last defense ship was destroyed or fleeing, the Freth turned their attention to the planet. They positioned their fleet in orbit and began the bombardment. Energy beams struck the surface with the force of nuclear weapons. Cities vanished in seconds. The beautiful green farms turned to ash. Oceans boiled. The atmosphere itself began to burn. Dr. Yoonji was deep underground when it started. The research facility shook like an earthquake. Rock dust fell from the ceiling. Her equipment went crazy, detecting massive energy discharges above. She ran to the communication room and tried to contact the surface. Nothing. Every signal was dead. She pulled up satellite feeds just in time to see the cities burning. Her hands shook as she realized what was happening. Her world was dying. Captain Minji managed to get her crippled ship away from the battle. Half her crew was dead or wounded. The Indomitable was barely flying. But she had one thing that mattered more than anything else. Data. Complete tactical recordings of the Vreth fleet, their weapons, their tactics, their ship designs. If she could get this information to human command, their deaths would not be meaningless. The bombardment lasted 18 hours. The Vreth were thorough. They did not just attack military targets. They burned everything. 11.7 million people died. When it was over, New Busan was a dead world. The oceans were steam. The land was glass and ash. Nothing moved on the surface except fire. Then finally the Vreth sent a message. It came across all human communication channels, cold and clear. This world contained traces of the precursor species. All such worlds belong to the Dominion by ancient right. Your presence was trespass. This is your only warning, the message ended. The Vreth fleet turned and jumped back into faster-than-light travel, disappearing as quickly as they had come. Captain Minji sat in the medical bay of her dying ship, watching the message repeat on a screen. Her wounds were bandaged. Her ship was limping toward the nearest human station. Behind her, New Busan burned. Ahead of her, she carried the evidence of what happened. She recorded a message of her own for human command. Short, direct, they killed everyone. We need to make them pay. Governor Hyunsu stood on the bridge of an evacuation transport with 300,000 survivors. His granddaughter sat in the corner, crying for her mother who had not made it off the planet. He looked out the window at New Busan, now just a glowing ember in space. His home, his life's work, gone. He clenched his fists and made a silent promise. Someone would answer for this. Deep underground, Dr. Yoonji survived in the research facility. The structure was built to withstand anything, designed to protect the precursor ruins. She had food, water, and air for months, but she was alone. Everyone she knew was dead. She sat in the darkness and wept. Then she dried her tears and went back to work. If the Vreth wanted these ruins so badly, maybe there was something here that could help humanity fight back. She would find it. Across human space, the news spread like fire. New Busan had fallen. 12 million dead. An alien empire had attacked without warning, without mercy, without reason. In homes and offices, on ships and stations, 34 billion humans heard the message. They saw the images of the burning world. They listened to the Vreth's cold justification. And something changed in the human spirit. Something old and terrible woke up. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson. Humanity could be kind and peaceful, but push them too far, hurt their children, and they would show you why peace was better than war. Part 2. 2 weeks after New Busan fell, every leader in human space gathered in Geneva on Earth. The Unified Terran Assembly met in emergency session. Representatives came from all 47 colony worlds. The Lunar Commonwealth sent their delegates. Mars Federation sent theirs. Earth's Continental Councils sent theirs. 34 billion humans across the galaxy watched the broadcast, waiting to hear what humanity would do. High Chancellor Soo-hyun Lee called the session to order. She was 67 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been a diplomat for 40 years, always searching for peaceful solutions. She had helped humanity make friends with 3 alien species. But New Busan was her birthplace. She had grown up on those farms that were now ash. Her voice was steady when she spoke, but everyone could hear the pain beneath. The council chamber was full. Every seat was taken. Giant screens showed representatives joining from across the solar system and beyond. The mood was dark and angry. People spoke in whispers, looking at images from New Busan, the burned cities, the dead world, the cold message from the Vreth. This is your only warning. Many in the room had lost family and friends. Everyone had lost something. Minister Tae-hyung-yoon stood to speak first. He was 44 and represented the outer colonies. His sister had lived on New Busan with her husband and 2 children. None of them survived. His voice shook with rage as he addressed the assembly. We must strike back immediately. We cannot let this stand. If we do nothing, we tell every alien empire in the galaxy that human lives are worthless. We become prey. We must show them that attacking humanity has a terrible price. Many people nodded. Many voices called out in agreement. The anger in the room was like a fire, burning hot and bright. But not everyone agreed. Dr. Young Soo Han stood slowly. He was 71 and one of humanity's greatest experts on alien civilizations. He had studied the galaxy for 5 decades. His voice was quiet but firm. I understand the pain. I share it. But we must think clearly. The Vreth are an ancient empire. They have been in space for 4,000 years. They have destroyed 17 other species. Their technology is more advanced than ours. If we attack them, we might lose. We might lose everything. Our entire civilization could end. We should try to talk to them first, try to make peace, offer to share the precursor research, offer to move away from disputed areas. War should be the last choice, not the first. The room erupted. Half the people shouted agreement, half shouted anger. High Chancellor Lee banged her gavel for order. The debate went on for hours. 3 groups formed, each with different ideas about what to do. The pacifists wanted diplomacy. Send envoys to negotiate. Find out what the Vreth want. Maybe humans could share the precursor sites or leave certain areas. Anything was better than war. They spoke of the millions who could die in a conflict. They reminded everyone that humanity had never fought a major space war. The risks were too great. The Hawks wanted immediate revenge. Launch every ship. Hit the Vreth hard and fast. Make them regret ever attacking humanity. Minister Yoon spoke again, his words full of fire. 12 million souls demand justice. They were farmers and teachers and children. They were our people. If we accept this massacre, we announce to the galaxy that we are weak. Every predator species will come hunting us. We must defend ourselves. We must make the Vreth pay. The moderates tried to find a middle path. Prepare for war while attempting diplomacy. Build up military strength as a deterrent. Try to negotiate but be ready to fight if needed. They argued that humanity needed time to mobilize properly. Rushing into war could be disastrous. Then Fleet Admiral Jiwon Nam stood up. The room went silent. She was 58 years old and the supreme commander of all human military forces. She was a legend among soldiers. She had risen through the ranks during the resource wars decades ago. She was known for brilliant strategies and absolute determination. When she spoke, people listened. I need to tell you something. Something that has been secret for 50 years. She paused and looked around the room. After the first contact war with the Kelvor species, human leadership made a decision. We would never be helpless again. We would prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. For 5 decades, we have been building a reserve fleet, a contingency force for exactly this situation. She pressed a button and images appeared on the giant screens. Vast shipyards hidden in asteroid belts. Massive construction facilities in the Kuiper Belt beyond Neptune. Automated factories on distant moons. All of them building warships. The numbers appeared on screen and people gasped. We have 127 orbital shipyards that have been producing vessels for 50 years. The ships are stored in hidden locations across human space, in asteroid fields, in Oort clouds, in the outer reaches of every system. They are fully automated and ready for deployment. 680,000 warships are waiting. Combined with our active fleet of 20,000, we can field an armada of 700,000 vessels. The silence was absolute. People stared at the screens, unable to believe what they were seeing. 700,000 warships. The number was impossible. It was bigger than any fleet in known space, bigger than anything in history. Someone asked the obvious question. How? How did we pay for this? Admiral Nam's face was grim. 40% of our total industrial output for 50 years. It was hidden in classified budgets and secret projects. The cost was enormous. We sacrificed economic growth, social programs, exploration initiatives, all to build an insurance policy. A guarantee that if someone attacked us, we could defend ourselves. Now we need to decide if we use it. The debate started again, but it was different now. Humanity was not helpless. The pacifists argued that having such a fleet made diplomacy even more important. Show strength, but seek peace. The Hawks argued that the fleet proved humanity had been preparing for this. Use it. Make the Vreth understand they made a terrible mistake. The moderates said the fleet gave humanity options. Negotiate from a position of strength. High Chancellor Lee listened to everyone. She thought about her childhood home, now dead. She thought about the 12 million people who would never see another sunrise. She thought about the message from the Vreth, so cold and arrogant. Your presence was trespass. She thought about what kind of galaxy her grandchildren would grow up in. Finally, she stood. I have listened carefully to all viewpoints. This is the most important decision humanity has ever made. We stand at a crossroads. One path leads to peace through submission, the other leads to war. Both paths have terrible costs. Her voice grew stronger. But there is something more important than cost. There is principle. There is justice. There is the future we choose to create. She walked to the center of the chamber. I was born on New Busan. I played in those fields as a child. I watched that colony grow from a few thousand pioneers to 12 million souls. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was home. The Vreth took it from us without warning, without mercy, without reason. They killed our people and told us we were trespassers on our own world. Her voice rang through the chamber. For 800 years, humanity has reached for the stars with an open hand. We have sought friendship with every species we met. We have shared our knowledge and our culture. We have built a civilization based on cooperation and respect. That is who we are. That is what we believe in. But when someone slaps away that open hand, when they murder our children, when they tell us our very existence is trespass, then we must respond, not with hatred, not with cruelty, but with strength, with justice, with a clear message that human lives matter. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with the delegates. We will make one final attempt at communication. We will send an envoy to the Vreth with clear terms. Surrender those responsible for the massacre. Pay reparations. Recognize our territorial rights. If they agree, we will have peace. If they refuse, we will show them why peace is preferable to war with humanity. We will deploy the contingency fleet, all 700,000 warships, and we will remind the galaxy that kindness is not weakness and mercy has limits. The vote was called. Every delegate entered their decision. The results came quickly. 89% voted for military action. The resolution was passed. The Unified Terran Assembly authorized Operation Righteous Fury, full mobilization of the contingency fleet, declaration of war against the Vreth Dominion if they refused to meet humanity's terms. Across human space, the news spread instantly. War was coming. The contingency fleet was being activated. 700,000 warships would launch. People had mixed feelings. Some were scared, some were angry, some were determined, but everyone understood this was a turning point. Humanity was about to show the galaxy who they really were. Admiral Nam immediately began issuing orders. Activation codes were sent to the hidden shipyards. Recruitment centers opened across every world. Volunteers flooded in by the millions. Young people who wanted to serve. Veterans coming out of retirement. Engineers and technicians ready to support the fleet. The entire civilization was mobilizing. Captain Minji Park, recovered from her wounds and promoted to Commodore, received new orders. She would command a carrier battle group, 200 ships under her authority. She thought of Admiral Daehyun, who had died defending New Busan. Officer training 3 months ago. Now he stood in front of the largest warship he had ever seen. The TDF Retribution was 2 kilometers long, covered in weapons, and had been sleeping in an asteroid for 47 years. His job was to wake it up and take it to war. The asteroid facility was hidden beyond Neptune in the Kuiper Belt. When Seonho's shuttle approached, he could barely believe what he saw. The asteroid had been hollowed out completely. Inside was a massive dreadnought sitting in perfect darkness. Thousands of systems were in hibernation mode. The ship's artificial intelligence had been running diagnostics for nearly 5 decades, waiting for activation codes that might never come. Until now, Seonho brought his crew of 500 aboard. They were young like him, trained but inexperienced. Engineers, weapons officers, navigation specialists, all volunteers, all scared, all determined. They moved through the cold corridors, their breath making clouds in the frozen air. Emergency lighting flickered on as they passed, guided by the ship's AI. The AI called itself Vengeance. Its voice came through the speakers, calm and almost eager. "Welcome aboard, Commander. I have been waiting." Seonho entered the activation codes. Systems began powering up across the massive vessel. Lights came on. Reactors started warming. Weapon batteries went through diagnostic checks. The Retribution was waking from its long sleep. It took 2 weeks to bring the dreadnought fully online. Every day, Seonho's crew worked 18-hour shifts. They loaded ammunition into railgun magazines. They fueled the antimatter missiles. They tested the shield generators and the faster-than-light drive. The AI helped with everything. Its automated systems handling tasks that would normally require thousands of crew members. By the end of the 2nd week, the Retribution was ready for war. Across human space, similar scenes were happening at hundreds of hidden locations. Chief Engineer Borum Shin was 45 and had worked on the contingency project for 20 years. She never knew if these ships would be needed. Now she stood at the Titan yards orbiting Saturn's moon, watching 27,000 warships come to life at once. The scale was incomprehensible. Capital ships stretched as far as sensors could detect. Destroyers, frigates, carriers, cruisers, dreadnoughts. Every type of vessel humanity had designed. Borum's team of 10,000 engineers ran through checklists. System checks, reactor status, weapon readiness, communication arrays. Everything had to be perfect. Every ship had to work. Lives depended on their thoroughness. Borum thought about her daughter who was serving on a frontline destroyer. Every minute she saved here might save lives there. She pushed her teams harder. They worked through exhaustion. 3 engineers collapsed and had to be taken to medical. Borum kept going. The ships had to launch on schedule. The fleet had to be ready. She would make sure of it. On Mars, Corporal Ji-ho Kang was 23 and going through basic training with 50 million other volunteers. He had lost friends on New Busan. He joined the Marines the day after the massacre. Now he was learning to fight in ways he never imagined. Zero-gravity combat, powered armor operations, shipboarding procedures. Every day was brutal and exhausting. His drill sergeant was a veteran of the Kelvor War, covered in scars and missing 2 fingers on his left hand. The man was brutal but fair. He pushed the recruits to their limits and beyond. Ji-ho excelled in the combat simulations. He was fast and smart, but he struggled with something else. The reality that he would be killing living beings. One night, Ji-ho asked his sergeant about it. "How do you deal with taking lives?" The old soldier looked at him for a long moment. "They stopped being just living beings when they killed 12 million civilians," he said. "They became the enemy. They became a threat to everything we care about. Now they are targets, nothing more. You remember that when the time comes." While the military mobilized, Ambassador Ji-hoon Kwon traveled to the Vreth border. The journey took 3 weeks. His ship, the Olive Branch, was small and carried only diplomatic staff. His destroyer escort stayed alert for threats. They reached the edge of Vreth territory and stopped. Kwon sent a message on all frequencies. Diplomatic mission from humanity. We seek communication regarding the New Busan incident. Please respond. It took a week for the Vreth to respond. A single corvette appeared, small and unimpressive. Its commander was dismissive, almost amused. The Vreth viewed humans as children playing at being civilized, a young species that did not understand how the galaxy really worked. The corvette commander agreed to receive the ambassador's message but made it clear this was a courtesy. Nothing more. Ambassador Quan presented humanity's demands. Surrender those responsible for the New Busan massacre. Pay reparations equal to the cost of rebuilding the colony. Formally recognize humanity's territorial sovereignty. In exchange, humans offered peaceful coexistence and trade agreements. The terms were clear and reasonable. The Vreth commander listened and then laughed. You demand? You who have been in space for less than 1,000 years? The Dominion is 4,000 years old. We have conquered 300 star systems. We have destroyed 17 species who opposed us. The precursor sites belong to us by ancient right. Your colony was trespassing. We gave you a warning. Be grateful we did not destroy more of your worlds. Quan remained calm. He pulled up data files and transmitted them to the Vreth ship. Technical specifications of the contingency fleet. Deployment positions of 700,000 warships. Production capacity of human industry. Strategic analysis of Vreth vulnerabilities. Everything needed to prove that humanity was not making empty threats. The numbers were overwhelming and undeniable. The Vreth commander looked at the data and laughed again. Impossible. This is a fabrication. No species could build such a fleet. Certainly not in the time you claim. Your bluff is noted and dismissed. The Dominion does not negotiate with prey species. You have 24 hours to leave our territory. If you remain, your ships will be destroyed. This conversation is over. Ambassador Quan spoke clearly and calmly. It is not a bluff. We spent 50 years preparing for a threat we hoped would never come. You made that threat real. You attacked our people without provocation. You killed 12 million civilians. We gave you every opportunity to avoid war. Now we give you 72 hours to reconsider. Accept our terms or face the consequences. After that, we will demonstrate that humanity does not make empty threats. The Vreth commander cut the communication. The corvette turned and jumped to faster-than-light speed, disappearing in a flash. Ambassador Quan sat back in his chair and sighed. He had done everything possible. He had offered peace. He had explained the situation clearly. The Vreth refused to believe. Their arrogance would be their downfall. He sent a message back to Earth. Diplomacy has failed. They rejected all terms. Recommend proceeding with military operations. Fleet Admiral Ji-won Nam received the message and immediately gave new orders. The contingency fleet received its final activation codes. Across human space, in hundreds of hidden locations, 680,000 warships powered up for combat. Their fusion reactors burned so bright they could be seen from neighboring star systems. Space lit up with the glow of humanity's war machine awakening. Commander Sianho felt the Retribution's engines come fully online. The massive dreadnought lifted out of its asteroid dock for the first time. Around him, 7,999 other vessels did the same. They formed into battle groups, each ship taking its assigned position. The coordination was perfect, practiced in simulations thousands of times. Now it was real. Commodore Minji Park stood on the bridge of her new command, the carrier TDF Dauntless. She had a battle group of 200 ships under her authority. Fighter pilots trained in the launch bays. Marines practiced boarding drills. Engineers monitored every system. Her crew was ready. She thought of Admiral Dae-hyun, who had died defending New Busan. She would honor his memory. She would make sure his sacrifice meant something. She addressed her crew over the ship's communication system. The Vreth think we are weak because we value life, because we tried diplomacy first, because we gave them every chance to step back from war. They are about to learn why those who mistake kindness for weakness never survive the lesson. Humanity gave them every opportunity to avoid this. They chose war. Now we show them what war with humanity means. Governor Hyun-soo Choi, leading the New Busan survivors, had spent 3 months analyzing the Vreth fleet that attacked his world. He knew their ship classes, their weapon ranges, their tactical preferences. He volunteered to serve as a strategic consultant to the military. They accepted immediately. His knowledge was valuable. His desire for justice was personal. His granddaughter asked him if they were going to get revenge. He knelt down and looked into her eyes. No, sweetheart. Revenge is about anger. What we are going to get is justice. Justice for your parents. Justice for everyone who died. And we are going to make sure this never happens to anyone else. She hugged him tightly and he held her, thinking about all the children who would never hug their grandparents again. The 72-hour deadline passed. The Vreth sent no response. They believed humanity was bluffing or too weak to matter. Their intelligence services had completely failed to detect the contingency fleet's construction. Their arrogance was absolute. Warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at Vreth Outpost Gamma 7. Commander Sianho Lim stood on the bridge of the Retribution as the enemy base appeared on screens. It was massive, protected by 400 Vreth vessels. The defenders scrambled to respond, but they were already too late. The human fleet formed a wall of steel that blocked out the stars. Sianho gave the order and every ship opened fire at once. Thousands of railgun slugs crossed the void at 90% of light speed. Antimatter missiles streaked toward enemy positions. Energy beams cut through space. The darkness lit up like 1,000 suns were being born. The Vreth fought back with skill and desperation. Their ships were more advanced individually. Better shields, more efficient reactors, stronger weapons. They destroyed 40 human vessels in the first minutes. But the numbers were against them. 20 human ships for every Vreth defender. For every human vessel that fell, 3 more took its place. The math was simple and brutal. Sianho watched his tactical display as the battle unfolded. The AI called Vengeance handled most of the ship's systems, coordinating with other vessels, targeting enemy weak points, managing power distribution. The crew's job was to make strategic decisions and handle emergencies. An enemy missile got through the point defense and struck the hull. The ship shook, but the shields held. Damage reports came in. Minor hull breach. 3 crew members injured. They kept fighting. The battle lasted 4 hours. The void filled with debris and escape pods and the bodies of dead sailors. The Vreth fought to the last ship. Not one surrendered. Not one ran. They died believing their empire was invincible. When the firing stopped, all 400 enemy vessels were destroyed. The outpost was reduced to scattered wreckage. Human losses were 340 ships. Sianho felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. This was just the beginning. Across the Vreth border, similar battles raged. At the Talvek shipyards, Chief Engineer Borum Shin commanded a specialized assault force. 12,000 human warships kept the defenders busy, while Marine boarding teams attacked the construction facilities. The Vreth were building super dreadnoughts in those yards. Humanity wanted them destroyed before they could launch. Corporal Jiho Kang was in one of the boarding craft. His squad of 10 Marines wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster. They carried weapons designed to kill in close quarters. The boarding craft punched through the shipyard's hull and the Marines poured out into chaos, alarms screaming, emergency lights flashing, Vreth soldiers rushing to defend their station. The Vreth were bigger and stronger than humans naturally, but the powered armor evened the odds. Jiho's squad moved through the corridors like they had trained 1,000 times. They used grenades to clear rooms. They covered each other's movements. They advanced steadily toward their objective, a partially built dreadnought in the main construction bay. The fighting was brutal and close. Jiho saw his first enemy face to face, a Vreth soldier, 7 feet tall with 4 arms and armor covered in weapons. The alien fired and Jiho's suit took the hits. His shields flared but held. He fired back. His armor's targeting system helped him aim. The Vreth went down. Jiho felt sick but kept moving. No time to think, only time to act. His squad reached the construction bay and planted fusion charges on the incomplete dreadnought. The timer was set for 10 minutes. They had to get out before detonation. But Vreth reinforcements arrived, blocking their escape route. The squad took cover behind equipment and returned fire. 1 Marine went down, hit in the leg. Jiho dragged him to safety while the others provided covering fire. They fought their way back to the boarding craft with 2 minutes left on the timer. The craft pulled away from the shipyard just as the charges detonated. 3 massive dreadnoughts exploded in balls of fusion fire. The mission was a success. But Jiho's hands were shaking. One of his friends was badly wounded. Another was dead, killed in the fighting. War was not like the simulations. Commodore Minji Park led her carrier battle group against a Vreth logistics hub. She used the asteroid belt in the system as cover, moving her ships carefully between the rocks. The Vreth defenders could not get a clear shot. Her fighters launched in waves, hitting supply convoys before they could scatter. Her destroyers picked off escort vessels one by one. It was a perfect execution of hit-and-run tactics. She thought of Admiral Daehyun often during the battle. He had taught her that protecting civilian lives was the highest priority. But he had also taught her that sometimes you had to fight to protect those lives. Every enemy supply ship she destroyed meant fewer resources for the Vreth war machine. Every victory brought humanity closer to ending this war and preventing future massacres. The Vreth High Command received reports from across their border territories. The news was catastrophic. In a single day, they had lost more ships than in the previous century. Dozens of military installations destroyed, key shipyards burning, supply lines cut. The reports seemed impossible. But they kept coming. Battle after battle, loss after loss. The humans were not bluffing. The fleet was real. Imperator Vrath Kor, the supreme leader of the Vreth Empire, refused to believe the reports at first. He ordered his intelligence services executed for obvious falsification. How could a species so young threaten an empire so ancient? It was impossible. But more reports came. Visual evidence, sensor data, survivor testimonies. The truth became undeniable. Humanity possessed a fleet that dwarfed anything the Vreth had seen before. The Vreth began recalling fleets from across their empire. Ships that were occupying conquered worlds. Ships that were patrolling distant borders. Everything was pulled back to defend core territories. But this caused new problems. Subject species that the Vreth had conquered saw the fleets leaving and began revolting. The empire that took 4,000 years to build was cracking. Vrathkor ordered total war. Every shipyard shifted to maximum production. Conscription was enforced across all Vreth worlds. The treasury was emptied to fund the military. They would not fall to these upstart humans. They could not fall. To do so would destroy the foundation of their civilization, the belief that the Vreth were superior to all other species. That belief had to be defended at any cost. 3 weeks into the war, the Vreth launched their counteroffensive. They gathered 150,000 warships, pulled from every corner of their empire. It was the largest fleet they had ever assembled. The target was the human colony of New Sol. They would repay humanity for New Busan. They would show these primitives the cost of challenging the Dominion. But Fleet Admiral Jiwan Nam had anticipated this. She knew the Vreth would try to strike at human colonies. She left 80,000 vessels in defensive positions around key worlds. When the Vreth fleet emerged at New Sol, they found a prepared defense waiting. The Second Battle of New Sol began immediately. It would become the largest space battle in galactic history. 150,000 Vreth warships against 80,000 human defenders. The numbers favored the attackers. But the humans had chosen the battlefield. They knew the terrain. They had prepared defensive positions among the orbital platforms and moon bases. They had minefields and weapon satellites and supply depots. The Vreth had to come to them. The battle lasted 3 days. 72 hours of continuous combat. Ships burning. Crews dying. The void became so cluttered with debris that both sides struggled to maneuver. Human casualties were severe. 31,000 vessels were destroyed. 140,000 sailors and soldiers died. But the Vreth suffered worse. Their doctrine relied on individual ship superiority. It failed against coordinated human tactics. Human ships fought in groups, supporting each other, covering weaknesses, combining firepower. When a human ship was damaged, others moved to protect it. When an opening appeared in enemy formations, multiple ships exploited it simultaneously. The humans fought like a single organism with many parts. The Vreth fought like proud warriors who refused to cooperate. Pride was their weakness. By the end of the 3rd day, 87,000 Vreth warships were destroyed or disabled. The remainder retreated in disorder. New Sol was saved. The planet's 12 million inhabitants watched from below as humanity's fleet stood victorious in orbit. They had been hours away from suffering New Busan's fate. Now they were safe. But the cost had been terrible. The Vreth Empire finally understood what they faced. Not a minor irritant, not primitive prey, but a pure military power, perhaps even superior. Their high command called emergency meetings. Their economy was straining under the war effort. Their subject species were rebelling. Their fleets were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Vreth Empire faced the possibility of defeat. In the aftermath of the New Sol battle, Dr. Yunji Kang made a critical discovery. She had survived in her underground research facility on the ruins of New Busan for months, studying the precursor sites. Under the pressure of war, she finally decoded a crucial database. The precursors had left behind a complete map of their ancient empire. Every site, every ruin, every trace of their civilization. More importantly, she discovered the truth about the precursors themselves. They had not died out. They had ascended to a higher dimension, leaving their physical empire behind. Part 5. 6 months into the war, the Vreth Empire was collapsing. Their economy was failing under the strain of total war. Factories that made civilian goods now made weapons, but there were not enough workers. Food production had dropped because farmers were conscripted into the military. Their subject species rebelled openly, seeing weakness. The empire that took 4,000 years to build was breaking apart in months. The Vreth government split into factions. Hardliners wanted to fight to extinction rather than submit. Moderates saw the futility and wanted to negotiate. Civil unrest spread across Vreth worlds as civilians suffered from shortages and constant military losses. The Empire's leadership was paralyzed by internal conflict. Meanwhile, humanity's fleet continued its advance, system by system, world by world. Commander Seonho Lim was now Admiral Lim, promoted after his performance in dozens of battles. The Retribution had been in continuous combat for 6 months. The dreadnought bore scars from enemy fire, but it kept fighting. Seonho had lost friends and crew members. He had seen things that would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. But he had also learned what it meant to lead in war. To make hard decisions, to sacrifice some to save others. The human fleet, now numbering 550,000 vessels after losses and replacements, gathered for the final operation. The target was Vreth Prime, the enemy homeworld. 20 billion Vreth lived on that planet. It was their cradle world, the birthplace of their civilization. Taking it would end the war. But how to take it without becoming the monsters who had attacked New Busan? That was the question humanity faced. High Chancellor Soo-hyun Lee personally led the diplomatic mission this time. She traveled to Vreth Prime aboard the flagship, surrounded by the most powerful fleet in galactic history. 550,000 warships arranged in formations that stretched across the entire star system. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy the Vreth if they chose. The question was whether they would choose mercy instead. The Vreth had 40,000 warships defending their homeworld. Every vessel they could still field. Every ship that could fly. They knew they were outnumbered more than 10 to 1. They knew they would lose. But Imperator Vrathkor ordered them to fight anyway. He broadcast from the surface, his voice full of rage. "We will never surrender to these primitives. We are the Vreth. We are eternal. Fight until your last breath. Die with honor." High Chancellor Lee broadcast her own message, transmitted on all frequencies so every Vreth could hear. "People of the Vreth Empire, your leaders started this war. They attacked New Busan without warning or mercy. They killed 12 million civilians. They claimed ancient rights that do not exist. They refused every offer of peace. Now your empire is defeated, but humanity does not seek to destroy you. We offer terms." She listed the conditions clearly. Complete military surrender. Trial of those responsible for the New Busan massacre. Dismantling of 90% of Vreth military forces. Reparations paid over 50 years. A supervised peace with human observers ensuring compliance. In exchange, humanity would not bombard Vreth Prime. Would not occupy their worlds permanently. Would not become the monsters that had attacked them. The choice was clear. Surrender or die. Imperator Vrathkor refused immediately. He ordered his fleet to attack, knowing it was suicide. He would rather see his civilization burn than admit defeat to a younger species. But his military commanders had spent 6 months watching their empire crumble. They had seen their fleets destroyed, their people suffering, their civilization dying. They knew the Imperator's pride would kill everyone. The fleet commanders held an emergency meeting aboard the flagship. They made a decision that would have been unthinkable months ago. They arrested the Imperator for crimes against their own people. They took control of the government. Then they contacted High Chancellor Lee and accepted her terms. Total surrender. The war was over. The formal surrender was signed aboard Lee's flagship. Vreth military officers in their dress uniforms stood across from human representatives. There was no ceremony, no grand speeches, just the simple signing of documents that ended the largest war in galactic history. When it was done, both sides simply nodded and left. There was no joy. Only exhaustion and relief that the killing was finally over. The final count was devastating. Human casualties included 89,000 vessels destroyed, 670,000 military personnel killed, and 11.7 million civilians dead on New Busan. Vreth casualties were worse: 420,000 warships destroyed, 8 million military dead, and their empire reduced to a fraction of its former size. Subject species that had been conquered were now independent. Systems that had been controlled for centuries were lost forever. The architects of the New Busan massacre faced human justice. The fleet commander who ordered the bombardment, the officers who executed it, the politicians who approved it, all were tried by an international tribunal with representatives from multiple species. The trials were fair and thorough. Evidence was presented. Defense arguments were heard. Then the verdicts were delivered. Guilty. All of them. They were executed publicly, not as revenge but as justice. Governor Hyun-Soo Choi testified at the trials. He spoke about New Busan before the attack, the schools and farms and families, the dreams and hopes of 12 million people. His voice broke when he described holding his granddaughter as their world burned. The courtroom was silent when he finished. The Vreth defendants had no response. What could they say? They had killed millions of civilians for no reason except arrogance. There was no defense for that. After the executions, Choi felt nothing. No satisfaction. No closure. Just emptiness. His granddaughter asked if the bad people had been punished. He said yes. She asked if they could go home now. He looked at her and said, "We are going to build a new home. Better than before. We are going to make sure this never happens again." She hugged him and he held her, thinking about all the children who would grow up without that chance. Admiral Lim oversaw the dismantling of Vreth military infrastructure. Shipyards were converted to civilian production. Weapon stockpiles were destroyed under human supervision. 90% of their fleet was decommissioned. The remaining 10% was enough for system defense but not for conquest. It was humiliating for the proud Vreth, but it was necessary. They had proven they could not be trusted with military power. Chief Engineer Borum Shin returned to the Titan yards. The massive shipyards that had built warships for war now shifted to building colony ships for peace. Humanity's industrial capacity, no longer focused on military production, turned to exploration and expansion. New colonies were planned. New worlds would be settled. The contingency fleet had served its purpose. Now humanity could focus on growth instead of survival. Corporal Jiho Kang, now Sergeant Kang, returned to civilian life. He had been decorated for bravery multiple times. He had fought in 30 boarding actions. He had saved dozens of lives. But the war had left scars that medals could not heal. He saw a therapist regularly. He had nightmares about the Vreth he had killed. He struggled with guilt and trauma. War had changed him in ways that would never fully heal, but he also found purpose. He became an instructor, training the next generation of Marines. He taught them tactics and weapons and survival. But he also taught them something more important. War is not glorious. It is necessary sometimes, but it is always terrible. Fight when you must, but never forget the cost. Never forget that enemies are living beings with families and hopes. Kill if you have to, but never enjoy it. That was his lesson. Commodore Minji Park became Fleet Admiral Park, taking command of the occupation forces that ensured the peace held. She established bases across former Vreth territory. She trained local defense forces for newly independent species. She made sure the power vacuum left by the Empire's collapse did not lead to more conflict. It was boring work compared to combat, but it was more important. Peace was harder to build than war was to wage. Dr. Yoonji Kang's precursor discoveries revolutionized human technology. The sites that the Vreth had tried to claim for themselves were open to multi-species research consortiums. Scientists from dozens of civilizations worked together to understand the precursors. New technologies emerged. New understanding of the universe. The knowledge benefited everyone, not just humanity. That was how it should be. The Vreth, humbled but not destroyed, slowly rebuilt under human oversight. It took a generation, but change came. Young Vreth who grew up during or after the war did not share their parents' arrogance. They learned to cooperate with other species. They embraced peaceful trade instead of military conquest. Some older Vreth resented the changes, but most accepted them. The alternative had been extinction. High Chancellor Lee authorized the construction of a massive memorial on the ruins of New Busan. Engineers worked for 3 years to build it. When it was finished, it was the largest monument humanity had ever created, a wall of black stone with 12 million names carved into it. Every person who died in the massacre, every life that mattered, every dream that ended. The memorial was visible from orbit, a permanent reminder of what happened and why it must never happen again.